Who is the better bet to win the NL Cy Young for the New York Mets this season? Is it Jacob deGrom or Max Scherzer? Is Francisco Lindor a legitimate MVP candidate? And will Pete Alonso lead the entire league in home runs? We'll discuss all of that on today's show as you're going to get your full betting preview for the New York Mets in the 2022 MLB season.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're watching Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. If you want to find any of my work, follow me on Twitter at FinkelsteinRyan. You can also find some of my writing at justbaseball.com, which brings me to welcome on my guest for today's show, Peter Appel, who is the founder of justbaseball.com. Let me remove my name there for you on YouTube. Peter Appel, you can find him on Twitter at PeterAppel23, the host of Not Gambling Advice, which gets to the show today because we're going to do a Mets betting preview. And today's show is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline, as you covered this season, with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. Ready to talk about some Mets betting, Peter?
Yes, more than anything, this is one of my favorite things to do. And I even have some of my bets that pertain to the Mets. So this is going to be fun. Thanks for having me on.
And I needed to have you on because I am that typical fan that just wastes their money betting on their own team. I can't tell you how much money I lost this year on Duncan Robinson 3-point props. It's been rough. And I don't want to repeat myself here with this Mets team where I could get carried away because I look at all of these odds from BetOnline and I get excited about a lot of them. And so what we're going to do here is kind of go through what BetOnline has to offer. And the first thing I want to start with is most valuable player. So there's three names here with the Mets that I think could conceivably win this award: Pete Alonso, Francisco Lindor, and Starling Marte. Before I get to the odds, I want to ask you from an outsider's perspective, which one of those players really fits that title of being the most valuable? Who do the Mets need to have success this year? Who has to really stand out and be the best player on this team?
Well, I think it's not a trick question because I think for the Mets to be successful, they have to get production from everybody, including those three names: Pete Alonso, Francisco Lindor, and Starling Marte. So I wouldn't say that if one player is the MVP and the other guys are doing their normal thing, that the Mets could win the World Series. And I think that's the point here. If we're talking about a most valuable player between these three picks, give me Francisco Lindor, even though I think it's more possible that Pete Alonso has the best offensive season. But with Lindor's glove, the value is certainly better at plus 1,800 versus plus 1,400. The WAR numbers might favor Francisco Lindor a little bit, and it's not that Pete Alonso doesn't have the MVP pedigree, but it just seems like if it came down to the voting and both had incredible years, but Lindor with the glove, he'll most likely be one of the best overall defenders in the sport if he were to win MVP. That's why I lean towards Lindor, even though it's more likely that Pete Alonso has a better offensive season.
The thing for me, when the Mets traded for Lindor, I think one of the things I said was you actually have a player that can win an MVP. It's conceivable. And that's why I love the deal. It's like you actually got someone that can be the best player in any given season, even though he hasn't quite done that outside. I think 2018 was the big year. But yeah, Lindor's tearing the cover off the ball in spring training. Everyone loves to overreact to spring training stats, but the guy's his OPS is like 1,600 right now. He had 4 home runs. He looks great right now. I think he's really comfortable. I could see him winning the MVP this year because I look at the 2006 season of Carlos Beltran. I've talked about this a lot on my show. 2005 first year with the Mets, didn't look good at all. His WRC plus was under 100 that year. Wasn't the Beltran that you knew he would become. 2006 comes around, second season, gets comfortable, and all of a sudden he's top 4 in MVP that year. Do you know who won the award?
In 2006?
2006.
I don't. You got to tell me, not off the top of my head.
Ryan Howard had like 58 home runs, dude. Like 140 something RBIs. Ridiculous season.
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
Ridiculous. But the thing is, that's the type of season a Pete Alonso would have to put up to probably win MVP, right? Because even in his rookie year, when he put up 53 home runs, he didn't win MVP because at first base, for example, Vladdy was Miguel Cabrera 2.0, but still lost out to Shohei Ohtani. So Pete Alonso has to have the best offensive season out of everybody to make sense to win MVP, while Francisco Lindor doesn't have to have the best offensive season because he could win a platinum glove alongside. Kind of like Carlos Correa in the American League this year. He didn't win MVP, but if Francisco Lindor can have a better offensive season than Correa did last year, which he is certainly capable of with the platinum level glove defense, Tatis is now out 3 months. Ronald Acuna Jr. is coming back from a knee injury. He's going to be totally fine. I know this is a Mets podcast. He's a Brave, but let's be honest with ourselves.
Yeah.
He's a very good bet to win MVP, especially at his odds. People are sleeping on him with the knee. He's going to be totally fine. He's a 23, 24-year-old freakazoid. He's going to be great. But overall, it has to be that combination of everything, because there are guys who normally might be in the MVP conversation. Juan Soto, another one. The Nationals may win 70 games. They may win less than 70 games. If Juan Soto has this incredible season, it doesn't necessarily mean he'll be MVP according to the voters. We as baseball people might look at his WRC plus and be like, he's the best hitter I've ever seen, but
got a 200 WRC plus this year.
68 win Nationals didn't cut it this year. So that's why I'm looking at the Braves. I'm looking at the Mets. Then you go look at the Dodgers. You know, they haven't had a lot of MVPs. Their last MVP was Clayton Kershaw back in 2014, because they just have so many amazing players. It's hard to decipher who was really the MVP of this 106-win season. So I don't think Lindor is even that bad of a bet at plus 1,800. But I got to say, if I decide with one, it's going to be Ronald Acuna Jr.
Yeah, I think, honestly, if we're trying to rein in the emotional Mets fan, I would just lay off the MVP voting, because you can get Pete Alonso at plus 1,400 for MVP, or just bet him plus 1,000 to lead the league in home runs, which I think is a much better bet. And some of the top names, we got Vladdy at plus 700, Alonso said plus 1,000, Olsen plus 1,200, and then you have Aaron Judge, Shohei Ohtani, Salvador Perez, and Mike Trout at plus 1,400. Is Alonso your favorite on the home runs front?
Yes. Pete Alonso put the ball on the ground more than he usually does. He had the lowest launch angle that he usually does, ground ball rates, all that kind of stuff, lower line drive rate than usual. But he looked like an overall more complete hitter, right? He was pushing the ball the other way. He just looked the best version of Pete Alonso, even though he didn't put up the 53 home runs that he did in 2019. But if he just improves on that a little bit, he has plenty pop. I don't have to tell you or anybody on this podcast that Pete Alonso is perfectly capable of setting the home run record this year. I think you can go right back to 53, and the value actually matches up pretty well with Pete Alonso. That's my actual pick to lead Major League Baseball in home runs.
Yeah, mine too. I also think, leading the league in RBIs is right in the realm for him as well. And I look at Pete, and last season he got off to a slow start like all of the Mets hitters did. But after, I think if you get through the first 2 months of the season, if I'm not mistaken, he started homering again like once every 15 plate appearances. That's sort of the rate that he's hit throughout his career. And so if you do that over a full season, you're going to be right up there to lead the league in home runs. I think the question, I guess, maybe is, can he lead, Major League Baseball? I think leading National League is a little bit easier for Alonso, but to have more than Vladdy might be a little bit tougher. I still think the odds, though, that's a great bet.
The reason why is I'm very high on Vladdy, as you should be. He's incredible. He just was put up a Miguel Cabrera 2.0 type season. But in the first half, he played in Dunedin, played in Buffalo, which are space stations for baseballs. So he had 28 home runs in the first half, 20 in the second half. Just a little bit of a discrepancy there. Like, would we be surprised if Vladimir Guerrero hit 300 with 40 home runs next year? That could very well happen, and it would be an amazing season. But Pete Alonso is more than capable of hitting 50. And the reason I was pointing to the line drive rates, the launch angle, the ground ball rates, is because Pete Alonso is among the hitters in baseball that with a small adjustment, those balls are leaving the yard instead of being doubles, right? Because he is in the upper echelons of max exit velocity, average exit velocity, hard hit rate. We know that. It's not a guy who, if he has to make a complete change, if he has a degree or two in launch angle, if he ups that, those balls are leaving the park. They're 400-foot home runs instead of just being stopped on a dime by the wall. they're just going out.
The best defender of Pete Alonso's home runs is the outfield wall. That's it.
Literally.
And I'll say the best bet that I cashed in on last year, Pete Alonso home run derby. That was easy money. Before we talk about some more bets, all these lines again provided from BetOnline. It's that time of year again. We got the end of the college basketball tournament. From all the latest odds, contests, and player props, BetOnline is the number one source for all of your sports betting needs and info. BetOnline remains the best spot for all of your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. It's not just basketball. BetOnline is your continued source for all of their sports wagering information needs, including live betting, your favorite Vegas casino games. So head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and the action. Bet online, where the game starts. All right, Cy Young. We got Steven Matz plus 8,000. What do you think?
No.
No? All right.
Not happening today, tomorrow, next week, next year. In his life, it's just not happening.
Okay, all right. So no Mets. All right, we got the 3 Mets that have a shot. Really, we'll just throw Chris Bassett into this conversation just to know the odds at plus 2,500. But it is Jacob deGrom and Max Scherzer. deGrom plus 300, Scherzer plus 1,100. I want to give you the argument for Scherzer because deGrom, the argument is simple. If he's healthy and makes 30 starts, he's the Cy Young. I mean, no one's better in baseball. But here's the Scherzer argument why I actually like this bet, maybe more than any we're going to talk about today. Max Scherzer, I could see the narrative bet, the narrative playing out for Max Scherzer. Here's the guy, the grizzled veteran, knew how to win with the Nationals, took this Mets team and made them a winner. Right now, he's throwing 90 pitches in spring training, starts his second start I was at, or a second outing because he relieved deGrom. 90 pitches. And I look at this Mets team, and you got Starling Marte in right field, Nimmo in center, Canna in left. I think the outfield defense is going to be great. You got Lindor at shortstop. I think Scherzer might not strike out as many batters this year because he's just going to be this workhorse pitching to contact. And I could see a situation at the end of the season where Max Scherzer has maybe made more starts than everyone else. I could see them protecting deGrom where Scherzer starts every 5th day. I could see them pushing deGrom back some starts to let Scherzer go. I could see him going 8 innings a lot. So if we get to the end of the season and maybe Corbin Burnes and deGrom and all these guys have great 180 inning seasons, but Max Scherzer's thrown 240, there's a chance where Scherzer is winning a Cy Young similar to Justin Verlander in 2019 where Garrett Cole was better, but Verlander got the award.
I want to reference your first point about Max Scherzer throwing 90 pitches in spring training. Do you think, and besides the numbers, because we can talk about the numbers in a second, but besides the numbers, a guy like Max Scherzer, a man, a workhorse, a guy who wants to be number one day in, day out, doesn't care who else is on the mound. Obviously, he respects the hell out of Jacob deGrom, and deservedly so. But there's that competitor inside of Max Scherzer. Don't you think Max Scherzer wants to win the Cy Young this year, maybe more than any other year when he's sharing the mound with Jacob deGrom?
I think so.
That's just another one of those narrative type things that maybe he turns it on to another level. Remember, now he's making $43 million a year. He's the man in that rotation. Jacob deGrom's the best pitcher on earth. He's making more money than Jacob deGrom.
Yep.
So that he's probably going to feel that a little bit. My only thing about Scherzer is he's 37, right?
Yeah.
That's the only thing. And the odds he's tied for the 3rd best odds to win it, which I think they're fair odds. He's at the same as Walker Buehler, right behind Corbin Burnes. I like that bet better than the Jacob deGrom bet. Not saying that Jacob deGrom couldn't win Cy Young. We were even talking on the Just Baseball show. Should Jacob deGrom win the Cy Young through 98 innings? Because he had a 1.08 ERA.
Yeah.
But Jacob deGrom's odds are plus 300. Corbin Burnes is next best at plus 900. So you put down 100, let's say, if that's your unit, to win 300 versus 900. Jacob deGrom could win Cy Young, like I said, but is it humanly possible for him to last a full season throwing 102 miles an hour? Like, for the human body to maintain a 200-inning type season. It could be at 33. Could be. But I'm not going to be betting on it. Do I still think he's the best in the sport? Yes. I'd rather bet on Scherzer, but my pick this year is Walker Buehler. He's young, 27. He's got the same type of stuff as they do. He's going to be on the Dodgers. He's going to be in the limelight. And I think the lineups that he's going to be facing, you could make the argument they're not as strong as the lineups that Max Scherzer and Jacob deGrom are going to be facing in the NL East. And at plus 1100, it's the same as Max Scherzer. That would be my pick over Scherzer, but I would pick Scherzer over deGrom if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that's kind of where I'm leaning too, because I think you're betting against health there on deGrom, and it's just at plus 300. I don't love that. The one thing I will say, since you mentioned the velocity, he's sitting 97 right now in spring training instead of 99. So my question to you, Peter, do you think Jacob deGrom can still get batters out throwing 97 on the fastball and 93 on the slider instead of 99 and 95? Is that possible?
You know that answer. Of course he can. He'll probably be better somehow. I mean, he's a freak of nature. I would actually prefer if he was 97 and 99 because I don't know if I prefer it, but I think it would
If
answer
it keeps him on the mound,
exactly whatever keeps him on the mound because he doesn't need 102. Like
yeah,
remember remember when he was looking in the dugout, I think it was at Scherzer and he just tossed in he stole a
yeah,
strike
yeah,
ball just because he could. I mean, he
yeah.
could do that with the changeup too. I'd rather see him implement more of that rather than just high spin, high effort fastballs right at guys. But it's interesting to stay more healthy, maybe use off speed instead of your fastball. It doesn't really compute. But then again, 102 from deGrom doesn't compute. So we're dealing with a completely different person.
It's funny because you see Scherzer kind of encourage him to throw the curveball, but the reason why he doesn't is because when you can dot your slider and it's the same location that's unhittable, and you have the fastball, there's no reason for him to throw anything else. That's why he does it. I want to run through some of the player props real quick, just real quick over under of what they have here, and then we'll get to the team stuff in a little bit. So just rapid fire. Chris Bassett over under 10.5 wins. What do you got?
I'm going to take over. Should
Okay.
I explain or do you want to go rapid fire?
Just rapid fire. We're just going to
Over.
fly right through them. Edwin Diaz, over under 30.5 saves.
Do I get to bet on blood saves too?
I
Yeah,
don't think they have that here at BetOnline. No.
he'll be 33 for 40 in save opportunities.
All right. Eduardo Escobar, over under 24.5 home runs.
I'm going to take under just because I think he's going to split time with JD Davis because it doesn't seem like JD Davis is on the move. But if he played a full season at third base, I think he would go over.
Yeah, there's also Mark Vientos. I could see him get called up and suddenly sap
80.
his playing time. So, yeah, I agree on that one. Oh, we got Francisco Lindor, over under 24.5 home runs.
That's a pretty good line. I think he's going to be around 24, 25. So I'll go over. This is a Mets podcast.
I mean, for me, you know what? When he's been good, he's hit 30 home runs.
Yeah.
I feel like what you want from Lindor as a player is Gold Glove defense and 30 plus home runs. So I'm gonna take that bet. deGrom, over under 235.5 strikeouts.
I would take the under. And
Yeah,
not
that's
because he can't do it. He could strike out 500 if he wanted to. I am just weary of the health. And this goes a lot for my bets really across the board. I just don't bet on people who I think are injury prone. Guys
makes sense.
who
Yeah.
have missed games. It sounds great. I just don't want to put my money on it. I'll bet on guys who I see more value who have been, have been consistent, have been durable. Injuries can of course happen. You can lose bets that way, but I've just felt it's been more profitable to just stay away. Like Byron Buxton, he could win MVP. I'm not going to bet on him to win MVP.
No.
That kind of stuff.
Part of that, you look at the health, the fact that Scherzer, who does not strike out batters at the same rate, 244.5 is the over under on that.
I'm going to go over on that one. Scherzer's mechanics are incredibly smooth. I don't think a lot of people give him enough credit for that. The fact that he's been so durable and how it looks herky-jerky, but it's very controlled. It's very smooth. He's got his windup down to a T. I think he's really, really good at knowing his body and staying healthy. And I think a healthy Scherzer strikes out more than that. I think he can be a 200 inning guy.
I like this one even more. Over under 12.5 wins for Scherzer. I think way over, to be honest with you.
I think way over. I hope he doesn't get the deGrom treatment where he goes 9-10 with a 0.8 ERA or something like that.
It's a different Mets. Don't do this to me. We got Alonso at 40.5 home runs.
Over.
Yeah, RBIs for Alonso 110.5.
Over.
Starling Marte home runs 15.5.
I'm gonna go under.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you on that. RBIs for Marte over under 64.5.
That's tough. Under? I don't know.
Steals for Marte 32.5.
I'm gonna go under again.
Yeah, I mean last year what he had like 47, but that was a
47.
crazy. It was a contract year. Maybe
Only
he was.
time he's been over 40.
Yeah. Last one they have listed. I think this is kind of interesting. Taijuan Walker is mentioned over under how many? I'm actually curious. What do you think the line's at for wins?
7.5.
8.5.
All right, I'll
So
go
I
on.
guess you're taking the under.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I was gonna if it was 7.5. I was gonna bet over. I think he wins 8 games. So
They got it right online there. All right, so let's now move over and talk about the wins, this division. Let's look at this from a team perspective. Right now, odds to win the NL East: Braves and Mets both plus 150, Phillies plus 325, Marlins plus 1,400, Nationals plus 4,000. I was talking about this with the host of Locked On Nationals today. The one thing that shocks me before we get to Mets Braves, do we really think that the Marlins and Phillies are that far apart from each other? It's kind of crazy to me.
say it again. What is the difference? It's
So it's
about
plus 325 Phillies, plus 1,400 Marlins.
that is pretty egregious. That should not. They should be closer. But then again, the Phillies should just drive down. Like plus 325 is not good value for the Phillies to win this
No.
division. They're the clear third. They don't have the rotation that the Braves or the Mets do, even though I do like the rotation. They have the worst defense in baseball. And their offense is loaded, but the Mets and the Braves have incredibly loaded offenses too. And then you go look at the bullpen. And I know the Mets bullpen has been in some years, and they lose Aaron Loop. But you go look at the Phillies bullpen; it's not much better either.
No.
The Mets and the Braves are the class of this division, and the Phillies are closer to the Marlins than really they are to the Mets or the Braves, in my opinion. I feel like the defense is really going to hurt them this year.
Mm-hmm.
And Zach Wheeler already dealing with a shoulder thing. Nola's getting crushed in spring training. If one of those guys goes down, it's basically over for the Phillies. They're not going to be able to hit their way, considering those one-run ball games. Like their run differential might be okay, but those one-run ball games are most likely going to lose when you don't have defense and you don't have bullpen. You don't win as many games as other teams, and they don't have it. So, but then it gets interesting. Mets or Braves, who's going to win?
Well, before we get to that, I have some would consider a scorching hot take on the Phillies. I think it's actually pretty reasonable. I think that there's a better chance the Phillies win the World Series this year than they win the National League East. And here's my argument. I think that over 162 games, all the stuff you just mentioned, I can't see them maybe having a better season than one of the Braves and the Mets, but not both of them. I just see no chance that they're going to win this division. But could I see the Phillies be the fourth wild card team and get hot in October? Because they're the ultimate puncher's chance team where they have 4 guys that can hit 6 home runs in 5 games and win a series. So I look at them as this team, and their World Series odds are plus 2,500. If I'm a Phillies fan, I'm going nowhere near the NL East, and I'm just throwing a little bit down on a magical season that probably won't happen. But again, I think the chances of them doing well in October is better than through a 6-month season.
I think you're spot on there. I didn't think about it like that. I think you're spot on there. That's better value. And I would assume that the Phillies World Series odds, I mean, I'm not assuming, it's just, it has to be a fact that the Phillies World Series odds are better. There's more value there than to win.
That's what I just said. It's plus 2,500. So
value that for sure.
Just throw a little bit down on that. If you're a Phillies fan, plus 325 is ridiculous. There's no I just can't see it.
And I'm not saying that they are the 80 and 82 or the 82.
No. I just think there's 2 95 win teams in this division.
I agree.
I don't think they win over 90.
I think the Mets and the Braves are the second and third best teams in the league. And that's just tough for the Phillies. You're gonna face 2 of the best teams in the entire league all the time in your division. I don't see the regular season win total being that high. I agree. I think it's more likely that they sneak into the wild card, especially with the Padres losing Tatis for a couple of months. The Giants are not the same team. They'll still be really good. Please do not sleep on the Giants. They're going to be great again. And the Cardinals, they haven't really solved their starting pitching. Jack Flaherty is a little bit banged up. say what you want about Steven Matz. I didn't love the signing personally. I'm glad for you Mets fans that you didn't sign him to a 4-year, $44 million deal. Miles Michaelis, Dakota Hudson, like these aren't established arms. Michaelis has been okay in
They
spots,
got
but
Pujols though.
they did get Pujols. But remember, they didn't upgrade at shortstop. They're rolling with Edmundo Sosa and Paul DeJong, which I do think is fine. I think that's serviceable, but they didn't add the Trevor Story, right? They didn't add the Carlos Correa, and the Reds blew it up. So I think that you're right. I think the Phillies have a much better shot of being a dark horse World Series favorite than winning their own division, which sounds weird to say, but I think it's spot on.
Thank you. I think it's a good take, and I haven't run with it yet, so I figured I'd open it up here. All right. Well, here's the interesting thing. You got the Mets and the Braves with the same odds to win the division, but then you go to win the National League or to win the World Series, and the Mets are, more favored here you got the Dodgers as the favorite for winning the National League at plus 250. Then the Mets at plus 475, the Braves at plus 750. You go to the World Series odds, plus 475 Dodgers, plus 800 Blue Jays, plus 850 Mets, Braves plus 1200. Is that just money coming in on the Mets? Is that all that is?
Yeah, the Mets are the most bet on team out of any MLB team to win the World Series. That's why, for example, I'm a Yankee fan. And when we're talking about betting on our own teams, I am never betting on the Yankees to win the World Series. The odds are just never good enough. If they win the World Series, happy for me. I win it anyway as a fan. Like, I don't need the money because it's never good enough value. They haven't won one since 2009. So if you continue to put money on the Yankees, you're going to lose. Mets haven't won a World Series in a little while. If you keep putting money on these plus 800 lines where teams like the Braves or teams, the Rays or the Blue Jays, they're just better value and they've had more success recently. It's just a matter of the fact that a lot of our New York sports teams, their lines get pounded. So the fans who want to bet on their own teams don't get the same value as they do if they were rooting for the Rays, for example.
Just talking right to me, because that's me every year.
Dude.
I always have to throw like $50 on it just because I feel like when the Mets eventually put it all together and win a World Series, I want to be rewarded. And you're right, I'm losing money every single year doing it.
Think about it. You will be rewarded by just winning, right? And then you probably be betting on individual World Series games. Like the value is simply not worth it. I mean, I just rather parlay every single deGrom start during the year, every single Scherzer start than bet on the World Series. Like and it's not that they can't win the World Series. I'm not here to say that because they should be one of the favorites. Starting pitching wins championships. And when you have Jacob deGrom and Max Scherzer, it doesn't really matter because you are the favorite to win game 1 and game 2 of every single series. And whenever they pitch, like game 6, game 7. And that's 4 games right there. So if you can get 4 starts in any series from Jacob deGrom and Max Scherzer, you have a chance to beat anybody in baseball. My only thing with the Mets is I wish they upgraded more to the bullpen. I know you love your guy, Jason Shreve, but the bullpen is fine, but I think at the deadline, they will be buyers for bullpen help because the Braves have a great rotation as well. And they went from the night shift to the nightmare. Really, Kenley Jansen, Paul McHugh adding to those 4 horses. That's just in one-run ball games, they have the lead over you guys. And Max Fried, Charlie Morton, Ian Anderson, Huascar Ynoa, they can bang with your starting pitchers too. So that's where it separates a little bit for me why I'm leaning closer a little bit to the Braves. But then again, that takes nothing away from the Mets because if I go Dodgers, Braves, next is Mets. Like that's how close it is.
Yeah, I agree. It's a toss-up, and that's why the odds reflect that, both at plus 150 to win the division. I think that this is going to be a pretty thrilling season, and if you want to follow along with all of it, I'll tell you at BetOnline, one of my favorite things last year, just home run props on Pete Alonso. I mean, especially if you're at a game, nothing like a home run prop paying off when you're at the game. Lars Nootbaar still owes me a lot of money for a robbed home run last year at Citi Field. I just want to say.
There's plenty of that.
And that was I think that was the second home run. I think I bet on 2 home runs from Pete. So that one really hurt. Thank you so much, Peter, for joining me. Why don't you let everyone know where you can find all your stuff for Just Baseball?
Definitely. So I'm the host of the Just Baseball Show and also the host of Not Gambling Advice. Our Twitter is at Just BB Media. That's for Just Baseball. My Twitter, as you can see below, and then you can see my writing on justbaseball.com as well as my guy over here, Ryan Finkelstein.
That's right. Just had his top 10 second baseman come out. Jeff McNeil snubbed, but not really. Not after the season he had, but by the end of the year, maybe he cracks that list.
that was someone who we needed to include. Also, Jeff McNeil is a guy who kind of plays all over, but he really is going to slot at second base. Like, even I had to leave a guy like Gleyber Torres off, who hit 38 home runs in 2019. I'm a Yankee fan. He wasn't on. Chad Chisholm, another guy in the NL East, he wasn't on there either. The
Yep.
second base list is
Loaded.
so incredibly stacked because we added all the utility guys in there. Trevor Story and Max Muncy now moved to second base. So you look at the list and you're like, well, I wouldn't have put Jeff McNeil on here because
No, I wouldn't have
he's
either.
one of the best players in baseball.
Yeah. Yeah. And he honestly, he had like 4 honorable mentions. I mean, maybe I would take Jeff McNeil over like Tommy Edman. You know, that might
Possibly.
be.
I think that was more of a wow, what a defender he is.
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
improving on offense. And he was still pretty good offensively last year, but we put more weight into 2021. And so
You should. All right. Well, as always, thank you to all the listeners for tuning in. You can follow me on Twitter at Finkelstein Ryan. You can follow the show at Locked On Mets. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listen every day. Now, for your second listen, check out Locked On MLB, hosted by Paul Francis Sullivan, but we call him Sully. Locked On MLB is where you want to go for all of your updates on Major League Baseball and to look back at the past. You can follow Locked On MLB wherever you get podcasts.